change orders can be good or bad, depending on how you see it. What story you're telling yourself? Are they a big pain in the neck that jump up in the middle of a project and cost you money and time? Maybe that's a strategy problem. Maybe, or perhaps, you would think about reframing that in your head and say, no, this is an opportunity to bring even more value, to ensure a much higher probability of a 5-star review, and to make a little more money on the side as well. Everybody wins. Hello. Welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building 6-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. This week, Wes Zimmerman from SynkedUP is back with us, and we're going to dispel one myth, whether change orders are good or bad. Which is it? Do you love them? Do you hate them? How should you feel about them? Tune in to find out. Hello, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and back with us this week is Weston Zimmerman from SynkedUP. We're going to be hammering away on the concept of change orders. Are they good or bad? Honestly, I hear some guys, they say, man, I can't believe my client's throwing change orders at me. They're such a pain in the neck. And others are like, woohoo, more change orders. I love this. So I'd love to dissect that with you this week, Wes, because last week we jumped into how can we be profitable on every project? Mm-hmm. And this ties directly into that. That ties into, because this is what's going to happen. You know, what we do is not, in a box. We don't make widgets in a factory. Absolutely. We're building awesome stuff outside. We've got the weather. We've got the ground, everything we don't know that's underground. We've got clients. We've got everything that can possibly happen, equipment breaking down, employees not showing up, all that kind of stuff. So what I'd love to focus today on is change orders, good or bad. What do you think, Wes?
Let's do it. Well, I'll tell you, I'll just dive right in by saying this. When I was a foreman for Tyson Landscaping, I sold over $300,000 in change orders as a foreman without ever going on a single consultation. I wasn't a salesperson. I was a foreman. So You tell me.
Dude, I love change orders, to be quite honest with you. Me too. we did a podcast years ago, Wes, many years ago when Dwayne was on, and this guy came on and he was talking about change orders, and he said, you know what? He had a client. He was a consultant. He had a client. You know what his name of his boat was?
No idea.
Change order. Because he bought his boat on change orders. Yes.
That's hilarious.
No, I'm not saying that the listener should go out and buy boats with the name change order on it, but the idea is, and it sparked something in mind, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute here. Change orders for most contractors are those pain in the ass things that the client asks for on Monday morning after you had the entire week planned out. You had everything lined up, all the materials there. You get there, Mrs. Jones says, you know what? I really do. Remember when we were back doing the proposals and I decided I didn't really want to do that extra landscaping down the side of the property that now I want to add it in because what you guys are doing is amazing and I would love to finish it off. I kick myself for not adding it in the beginning. And you have one of two paths mentally to take at that point. The first is, oh crap, I'm not prepared for this. I don't have time for this. My next client's driving me nuts to get on the site. This is going to take an extra 2 days. Oh my God, like this negative spiral of why this makes no sense. Or, this is the great or you can say, wait a minute here. This is amazing. This is a great opportunity to help add value for Mrs. Jones, and change orders should be your highest margin of any sale you make. Because they're the biggest pain in the ass. They happen on site. The client has already bought the rest of the project. The chance of them saying yes is much higher. So when you think about it, a change order solves your problem and their problem. It gives them what they want. Yeah. And it also helps you with profitability too, because you can say yes to something that most of your employees and equipment are already there for. So what do you think about that?
Well, a change order, a couple of good things about change orders. And here's the thing. You are going to hate change orders if you don't leverage them properly. Because, they are going to be a pain in your neck and they're not going to help you financially if you're not leveraging them properly. So the key is leveraging them properly. And what I mean by that is no discounts for change orders, meaning like my markups and everything's the same. If not, if anything, it's even more for convenience fees. I'm going to throw Mrs. Jones $1,000 for having to wait 2 days now, and I'm going to bake that right into my price for this change order. Like, make it not your problem, make it their problem. If they still want it, okay, I'm not going to take on the stress. I'm going to chip. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I'm gonna send bake in the price of a nice gift card to the next client that has to wait now or whatever. But the point is practical speaking, your equipment is already all on site. Your crew's already rolling there. You probably are not going to have to do hardly any logistics, maybe ordering a few things and getting that over to the job site. And you already did all the excavation. There's I'm just thinking, okay, the story I was saying about I was selling $300,000 worth of change orders as a foreman. The most common thing I was doing was coming in to do a patio, landscape lighting, that kind of thing. And then I'd throw in an $8,000 bubbling rock off the corner. We could literally do it in half a day. And sometimes it didn't add any more production or calendar days to the job schedule. We were able to just kind of bring an extra guy one day and still get it all done on the original schedule. But we dramatically increased the profitability of that job because that bubbling rock package was priced as, hey, I might have to drive for 45 minutes to the job site. I'm going to have to pull all the logistics together, all that stuff that no longer needed to be done, but I still sold it at full price. Why? Yep. That was the retail value of it, Yep. And so because of greatly reduced mobility and logistical issues with change orders, you make a lot more money and or a lot greater margins at doing the same work as if you had sold the work by itself. That's what I love about them. And the other thing is like, don't throw the monkey back on their back. Don't make it your problem to now have to deal with the scheduling changes. Like, whatever it's going to take to make it a win-win-win for everybody, whatever the cost of that is, bake it into the cost of the change order. And if they say no, then cool, now it's not my problem. If they say yes, well, cool, it's a win-win-win-win.
Exactly, dude. And you know what? I think that, I know back in my early days, I would think, all right, well, if we're already on site, I can do it cheaper. Yeah, Mrs. Jones, we talked about it being like $8,000 for that water feature. I can do it for $7,000 because we're already here, all this kind of stuff. And then I look at the end of the project, I'm like, so I robbed from my next client the opportunity to be there early so I could solve Mrs. Jones's problem. But now I have less money. It was a bigger headache. I had to stop everything and order the extra pond package in this example, right? I had to order all of that stuff. And then we couldn't even touch that side. That's our access side. So like all these things. And I would be like, why did I even say yes to that? Until I shifted this mindset and said, well, you know what? If our overall bigger objective is to make sure that our clients are well taken care of, that they see tons of value, that they love the experience. And if Mrs. Jones comes for that water feature on D-Day when you're ready to roll, why not say yes to it? It just has to be at the right number, right? And the probability of her saying, yes, let's add it in at a higher rate is very, very high because you're already there. She's already said, I want this thing. So now all you have to do is obviously not take her over the barrel for it. You know what I mean? But it's a matter of it being logical, but you have to set up a scenario where you win, she wins, so everybody wins and we can move forward. And if they say no, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay if she says no.
And there are some things about doing a change order, even at full retail price, that is still cheaper for the client that you should leverage. Meaning like, hey, if we do it now, we're not going to have to, we're already are going to be fixing the grass. We're already going to be putting all the irrigation back together. So if we do it now, you're going to, versus doing it in 2 years when you save up some more money or whatever, it's going to cost you more to do it later because I'm going to redo the grass, I'm going to redo the irrigation. So there are still, it's not like, I just want to make sure that listeners aren't getting confused with me saying, or us saying no discounts, blah, 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 blah. Even with that, it's still cheaper for the client to do it at the time of you doing, you're already there with the dirt is broke open and you already have a construction site underway. It's still cheaper. It's still going to cost more. Even that same $8,000 building rock is going to be $12,000 when I come back in 2 years to do it because prices are going to go up. I'm going to have to do the grass. I'm going to probably break some irrigation. Going to have to rework the lighting. Might need a new transformer. All of that stuff. So it's still cheaper, even at full retail price to do it. On the same construction project that you're on there now.
Yep. 100% true. And plus she gets what she wants. And our goal is obviously to add as much value as possible. And if we can get her a full package that she changed her mind, instead of shying away from it and being scared of the idea that it's going to mess up your entire process, you have this perfect plan that you're going to get into this project, be out in 5 days and be on to the next one because you're already 3 weeks behind. And now she's throwing things at you. Look at it as a blessing. Now, if you know that it's your highest margin, how often are you going to want to say no to that? I mean, honestly, even if you're not driven by money, you know that your highest margin may be financially, but also you're doing that emotionally for her too, because now she can have a complete space.
Yeah.
So it's not just the money. It's also the fact that you're solving her problem and adding massive value to her life.
Exactly.
That's the part. So I think that a lot, I know I struggle with this, Weston, in the beginning, where there was this conflict in my heart where it's like, yeah, I want to take care of the client and do this, but I've also got to think about the next project. And I got to be thinking like, what if I lose money on this part? I'm not really planned in for this. I've got to wait for materials. Now we got to stop this project, move to the next one, or whatever it might be, right? There's all these things that come in, but if we slow it down and we say, all right, wait a minute here. What is my objective? Well, we need to make money, of course. We need to serve people, of course. So what if we can do that both? Maybe we just have to get creative with how we think. And if there's an incentive in there where you know that those change orders become a highest margin of what you sell, how many are you going to be looking for? Honestly, when Mrs. Jones, and this is the cool part, your guys in the field, just like you did as a foreman, you would go through and Mrs. Jones would come out and say, hey guys, this looks great. What if we added this? And what if your salespeople in the company were like, all right, well, we can maybe give some of that responsibility over to our foreman and have the highest margins, right? So they can be creating another revenue stream for you through this. But not that they're trying to poach anybody or out there saying, Mrs. Jones, that fence is a little dingy. I think we can rip it down and put another one up for 20 grand. Like, not trying to take advantage of Mrs. Jones. But if you see opportunities, clients want their yards to be amazing. And if you don't say something, you're robbing them of that opportunity.
You have to be, to your point, you have to be in the mindset and in the heart of serving the customer, adding value. Yes. You can't be like, oh, where else can I, that is a key thing, because people's sixth senses are really, really smart. Like, they can tell what you're trying to do. And what's to that sixth sense part, what would often happen, of no fault of the salesperson, I would say, I mean, maybe we can always get better as salespeople, but the client was expecting to be sold to by the salesperson on the consultation. And so in their heart or in their mind, emotionally, they were preparing to put up walls and say no to the bells and whistles, like the water feature and the lighting. They just they didn't want it. They didn't want the salesperson to come in and sweep them off their feet and get them for the whole kit and caboodle. Like, that was the mentality they were in emotionally. But when they said yes to just the patio and the landscaping and that's it, nothing more, and the foreman came in, you start building a relationship with that client. The foreman does. The client does not feel like the foreman is a salesperson or trying to take them, so to speak, even whether the salesperson was or wasn't, that's a different matter, but it's what the client feels or is prepared for emotionally. Often the foreman doesn't have that air about them in the client's perception, and they care. They actually, like, I literally saw this over and over and over again, where maybe Derek, the salesperson, promoted the water feature and the client said no. They come in and I'm like, man, sometimes I didn't even know Derek had done that. Like, man, it would be awesome to have a water feature. Man, I can't tell you how much lighting adds to a project. You should really do that. And they would genuinely lean in and care. That you could tell they cared what I thought. They're like, really? Do you really think so? Yeah. Completely different conversation than what they were having with the salesperson 6 weeks ago. They cared what I thought. They trusted my opinion. And I would pitch the exact same water feature to them or whatever, and then take it, you know? And of course, you have to be in the mindset as a foreman, me and the job site. It's about me looking out for, what do I think Mrs. Jones is envisioning this space to do for her? Or, like, and what suggestions can I bring to the table that would make it all that much more better for them? So, but anyway, the dynamic that I want to pull out here for people to be aware of is that whole thing of a client being prepared for the salesperson to sell to them versus the foreman doing the work. And you're not the salesperson, so what do you think? I trust your opinion. Yeah, it's really something to think about, be aware of. And I don't know, I don't want to use the word leverage, but show up to serve and show up realizing that the client may more readily accept your opinion as a crew member or foreman. Or even if you're just reinforcing what the salesperson had said, you're like, oh, really? So you genuinely do think this? Okay, well then let's go ahead and do it,
But that's very different than, hey, you know what? I'm going to tell everybody I need a water feature. I'm gonna tell everybody they need a water feature. Mrs. Jones has never mentioned one. I just see a hole in the side of the yard that we could plug an $8,000 water feature in. So I'm gonna go, Mrs. Jones, you need a water feature right there. and she might not even want one, but doesn't want the maintenance of it, doesn't even care about it. That's just not her thing. That's a different side. If you're out there trying to create change orders from no need, want, or desire from the client, that's flat out thievery, in my opinion, right? You can suggest things if you want, but it's not like this is missing this space because, well, it's all about what's directing your question. What's directing your heart? Is it greed? Hey, I want to sell more stuff to make more money. Or is it actively something you picked up in a conversation with her when you're going through building the project? She's like, you know what? We have a lot of road noise here. What do you think would be the best way? I didn't think about that during the design process. Well, we find that water features, can help mitigate some of that. Have you ever thought about a water feature? That's a different thing because you're solving a problem. Yeah, because exactly. You're right, when it comes to sales, most clients, and you mentioned this earlier, most are going to put their guard up right away because they're expecting to be sold to. This is very much the world, right? Especially with bigger ticket items like we sell, 5 and 6 and 7 figure projects, right? It's like, this is something they're expecting to be sold to. So if you can come in and learn how to communicate where you're not selling them anything, you're simply helping them along a journey to find the very best solution. Think how fast that guard comes down and they start just becoming people. You're building a relationship and finding the best solution and path forward for them by asking great questions in the right order and working with them, listening. Listeners, listen to this. Listening to them more than talking. It's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the sound should be coming from your client's faces, not from yours. 20% from you. This is how it should work. And if you can flip that script, you're going to learn so much about how to serve that client in a way that they need to be served. This is not about you going out and serving the way you think they need to be served. This is about listening like a great detective and trying to crack the case. What solution is going to best facilitate their use of that space? We want comfort. We want daily use. What does that look like for that client? Yeah. And then taking those cues and coming up with solutions out of your basket of tricks to be able to help with them. Maybe it's a patio, a seating wall, a water feature. Maybe it's landscaping. Maybe it's a deck. Maybe it's a roof. Maybe it's a pool, whatever it might be. How do we solve problems once we know what they truly need, want, and desire? Not, what do? I do these 6 things, so everybody needs 4 or 5 or 6 of all these things every single time. That's the difference. So when it comes to change orders, a great design will probably have only a few change orders as you go through. And maybe you don't have that many. We don't do a whole lot of change orders here at Master Plan. We really don't, because we want to go through our sales process, our design process so specifically that by the end, there's really no other questions. But sometimes it still happens. Sometimes the client's like, I can remember a situation where we were doing a roof deck patio combination for a client with a fireplace and all kinds of stuff, outdoor kitchen. It's about a $180,000 project. And during the process, when I was speaking with the client, I said, look, one thing that is really, really nice when you do a roof system off the back of a house, especially attached, is that we do skylights in the roof. Large, open, volume of skylights that allow passive light back into your kitchen. Because the last thing we want to do is create a cave in your kitchen. Kitchen's a place you spend a lot of time inside the house. When you look out of the window, if it's really dark, your energy changes. So let's do a nice big, skylight over top of that so it casts the light back in. And she's like, no, we don't really need skylights. I'm like, okay, no problem. All right, just want to let you know, I don't want you to ever think that we didn't talk about it. So construction starts, right? Construction starts. And we're working along, building this thing. Everything's fine until they put the plywood on the roof. And then all of a sudden, things get dark in the house. That night she calls. She's like, I'm rethinking my dislike of skylights. And she put 3 in. And to this day, if you asked her what her favorite part of that space was, it was being able to put the skylights in. Because the next morning she called and we're like, hey guys, then I talked to my guys. I'm like, hey, can you bring 3 skylights? She wants to add them in. And she's like, yes, change order. But we want to make sure that by the end she loves it. And that's really what it's all about. Yeah. We could have said, no, this is the middle production. I can't get this guy. I'm not going to do that. Or, oh, we're going to lose money in this. Why are we doing this? No, she paid premium for it and got him in next day. And now it's one of her favorite things, because our ultimate goal, Wes, through all of this is to create raving fans. To create so much value that we get raving fans, because we don't have to market a whole lot when the whole neighborhood's talking and singing your praises, because you slow it down, you listen to your clients, you know exactly what they need, and you don't just give them what everybody else has told them they need. You've listened well, and now you've created something that is really a strong solution for their family. That's the most important part, right? Yeah. So to kind of circle this all the way back around, change orders can be good or bad, depending on how you see it. What story you're telling yourself? Are they a big pain in the neck that jump up in the middle of a project and cost you money and time? Maybe that's a strategy problem. Maybe, or perhaps, you would think about reframing that in your head and say, no, this is an opportunity to bring even more value, to ensure a much higher probability of a 5-star review, and to make a little more money on the side as well.
Exactly.
Everybody wins.
Yeah. I just want to highlight a little bit about the whole thing of serving the client, being in the right mindset when you're suggesting the change orders. Like, I just want to acknowledge that most of us that do this kind of work, like, we are craftsmen and artists at heart. Like, our head is exploding like popcorn with these ideas. So I'm not saying filter them because I don't want to appear greedy. No, I doubt that if you're listening to this podcast, you're a greedy contractor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really think that's a huge problem in our industry. Maybe you might be perceived as such. That's a communication problem. But like, what I want to say is like, no, let that create those creative juices, those ideas you see, the dip in the yard that could take a water feature, even though Mrs. Jones never asked for a water feature. Hey, have you ever thought about this? This would be amazing. Like, I have a feeling you would enjoy that. Maybe you're not a water feature type person. Okay, cool, no problem. Thanks for telling me that. And off we go. I'm not going to try to coerce you after you tell me what you want. But the point, all I want to say is like, don't try to dampen those inspirational ideas that pop into your head as you walk around the corner of the backyard on day 3 and you see it coming together and you're like, oh, this would look so amazing, even though Mrs. Jones never asked for it. Go ahead and suggest it. And they will, in my experience, they will greatly and genuinely appreciate your suggestions in that way.
Yep. Specifically when they're coming, as Weston's talking about, from the heart, because you honestly think authentically that that's going to be great, not just a way to make more money.
Yeah.
The clients know that. They can smell that bullshit from a mile away when they go, oh, Mrs. Jones, have you thought about a water feature? You got a hill. Like, I don't even like water feature. I told you I didn't want one in the beginning. Yeah, but it would still look great there.
Yeah, that's a different
Here's the bill. Right? But it really is from the genesis of where the idea came from. Is it from the heart because you honestly think it would be? You offer it and it either goes flat or goes somewhere. You have to be open to that. But you just want to make sure that she never has to live with regret in her heart. Because ultimately, the main focus of this episode is about consistently looking for opportunities to add massive value for your clients. That's really what it's about. And not thinking that those change orders that might happen on the day you're working, you're out there ready to go, that they're a bad thing. They could be a good thing if you frame them right. Yeah. Or they could be a bad thing if you don't frame them right. So there's opportunity there.
They will be a bad thing if you're not clear about them along the way. Like, nothing's worse than having 2 or 3 change orders, but yeah, sure, we can do that. But you never took the time to tell the client what that would cost. You just said, yeah, we can do that. There's all kinds of reasons why a contractor might be hating change orders. And usually it's because of one of these things. You never told the client, then there was a big blow up at the end. They refused to pay. Well, yeah, no kidding. You never told them what it was going to cost. They just said yes because they love the idea.
I'm so glad you brought this up because this was going to be the last wrap up point. Anybody out there doing change orders, if you want to be able to sleep at night, get them signed. Mm-hmm. Write them down. Take your time. Yep. There's no faster way to piss a client off than to say, yeah, we can take care of it. And never assign a number to it or anything signed. And then at the end, the client's like, well, I thought you were just going to take care of it. You said, yes, yeah, you can take care of that water feature. Well, duh. Of course I'm going to charge you for it. But they never got a bill. They never got a bill. They have no idea what they're signing up for. They just heard, yeah, I can do that. And off you go. And then you sit there at the end pissed off because your client who you did really well with all the way up until you got that final invoice to them. And then all of a sudden they hated you because they're like, wait a minute here. This is a $52,000 project. And why is it now $60,000? Well, it's for the $8,000 water feature, of course. Yep. And they're like, but we didn't sign up for $8,000. We thought if you're going to maybe a couple $100, we don't know what this stuff costs. So listeners out there, if you want to save everybody some pain, get the courage. And when they say, yeah, I would love to add that, say, no problem. Let me write it up for you and I'll have you sign it and we'll continue to move forward. Mm-hmm. Change orders get paid 100% up front. Mm-hmm. Simple. 100% up front. If they want it, they pay 100% up front. Simple. Done. Mm-hmm. 8,000. Write me that check. We'll get it in here. We can start tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Done. Think about how much stress and overwhelm you won't have when you go for that final invoice and walk through, and you know that there's about $12,000 worth of change orders that you didn't talk to Mrs. Jones about. And now you've got to go in there and ask for that money, and your heart's beating out of your chest thinking they're going to say no. And then they confront you and say, whoa, Wes, like, what are you doing here? This isn't this. And now all of a sudden the entire relationship is soured because of that. Yeah. So slow the process down, listeners. Write something up. And when you write something up, have them sign it. Hey, it's an $8,000 water feature. Sounds good. Here's what it includes. Remember, black and white. If you listen to the last episode, it's black and white, not gray. You don't write water feature on it and then be like, oh, okay. And then they look at it and they're like, well, that's a water feature? I thought you said there's going to be driftwood. And I thought you said there's going to be big boulders. And I thought you said, I thought. And pretty soon they're pissed off because they're thinking, again, expectations were way off. and you brought all those cheap boulders you had in the corner that you had from that last project that were extra and all this stuff, and you kind of just threw it together quick, and now they're pissed off because it doesn't look the way they think it should look. So expectations again, everyone listening. So clear expectations is going to solve that problem. That's certainty for you, right? When you go with that bill of $12,000 of change orders, they've already signed all the documents for that. There will be no pushback for that because they've expected it. You're setting expectations again. Simple, but don't do it where you come in and say, yeah, we'll take care of it. Yeah, we'll take care of it. Yeah, we'll take care of it. And then bill at the end. Oh, that pisses people off. That 5-star review is just shot in the ass. Done.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling that if you don't like change orders, you probably 90+% probability you have a communication problem.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And to your thing about, hey, slow down and get it signed and all that, or you synced up and don't slow down and still get it signed in seconds and keep rolling, you know?
Exactly. It's all about expectation and setting expectation.
100%.
If you can set X and deliver X plus, you're always going to be fine. But if it's when you set an expectation of X and you deliver an X minus, that the client's like, wait a minute here, I feel like I got gypped.
Yeah.
So it's always about that clarity and making sure that the client knows what they're getting in exchange for the financing that they're offering or the money that they're offering.
You know, you can't really control if the client feels they got X minus, but what you can control is the expectations you set. That's the solution that you work on. There's always that, to your exact point. There's the, I need to inflate it a bit to sell it, and then I got to deflate it to make money. Right. So that's, we got to be careful of that. If you're going to inflate it to sell it, you better make sure your numbers match that. So when you then build it, you can build an inflated version, not a deflated version, because you're trying to make money. So be very, very careful. And if you aren't good with numbers off the hip and clients are asking for change orders, slow them down. Say, hey, no problem. I'll have that back to you in a few hours. Let me pull my head around it. You don't have to pull off the hip with that. $4,000, $3,000, $2,000, like, and you're going to lose money that way. Take your time. Another thing I would say, and this is probably just, I'm not portraying this as something everybody should do, but this is something we did at Tussey, and it was so much fun to do, is we had the margin in the job to expect those little favor requests. We were expecting those little favor requests from the client. Like, hey, can you mulch that little bed in front of the house too while you're doing the back where you did the work? Or, hey, can you whatever. Can you hook my lighting out front into this other fancy transformer that hooks to the Wi-Fi as well? You know, it's going to take a guy 45 minutes to put it together. And there's something really, you're able to deliver the sense of going above and beyond when you already have the margin built in from the beginning on the original quote, expecting to do a favor 2 or 3 for the client, and having the freedom to say, yeah, we can do that for you. I'm not saying go throw a water feature in the ground. I'm just saying the little thing that's an inconvenience to you that might take you 30 minutes or an hour and you wish you wouldn't have to. It might cost you $100 to do, or whatever. Like those are the kinds of things that when you have the margin and the freedom to say yes to those things, you blow people away. And that's so much fun. I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying that's how I like to do business. Right. But that's the X plus side, right? Yeah, so if you're building into Wes's point, if you're building an extra couple $100 to each project, to be able to be a yes man or a yes woman, to be able to help with these little things, couple $100 things here and there that are inevitably going to come up, that certainly does help with that 5-star review. That certainly does help with the raving fan side of things. So don't be afraid to add that in. But I think Wes, your bigger point is budget for it. Exactly. It's a cost of business. Put it in. Yes. Don't not do it and then still be a yes man. That's where you get drowned. Yes. You're down to razor thin margins on everything, including your time. And you're like, she wants me to mulch the front and do this other thing? Okay, sure. And then you're going even further into debt on the project. Yeah. So it's really a matter of being ahead of the game, knowing your production rates, knowing your budget, knowing how to create black and white communication with clients for expectations, and then roll from there. And there's a lot of value in that. So, well, I appreciate you coming on, Wes, and listeners out there. You know, at the end of the day, it's always looking consistently for opportunities to serve your client at a higher level. And if it becomes a change order, make sure it's win-win. Yeah. That's really the bottom line. That's how you're going to look forward to these change orders. Make sure it's win-win. And if you know your numbers ahead of time, because you're working with SynkedUP, you know how to communicate with clients. Next thing you know, this could be a great new cash flow model for you that could actually give you another stream coming through and create raving fans for your clients, not taking advantage of them, and create raving fans because you're solving a pain point for clients while you're there. Yeah. If you're doing it right, if you're doing it right, once in a while you'll have a client mention the change order in their 5-star review.
Yep.
That's a sign you're doing it right, because they appreciate what you contributed for them.
Absolutely. Well, Les, it's been awesome having you on this time. Next episode, guys, we're going to jump into client said what? How to flip the script when your client presentation is falling apart, right? We can all talk about being awesome at selling or awesome at communicating, but what happens when things go south? How do you tread water when you've got cinder blocks on your feet, right? So we're going to get into that next week, guys. So Wes is coming back and we're going to hammer through that one. So see you next week. Thanks, Wes, for coming on.
Yep. Thank you.